We're returning to our top story now, and as we've been reporting, Benjamin Netanyahu has launched his long-awaited ground invasion of the Gaza Strip. Israel's Prime Minister has issued another stern warning to his enemies, stating that the country is fighting its second war of independence. Let's bring you more analysis now and bring in live from Washington Professor John Blaxland. He's the director of ANU's North America Liaison Office and also a strategic and defence expert. John, appreciate your time with us as always. Thank you. How do you expect this ground invasion will play out from this point? Is it likely the IDF will be taking a slow and steady approach as they edge further into the Gaza Strip?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the program, Ash. Good to be with you. This is really a tragedy unfolding, no question. But they will have learned lessons from America's experience in previous urban operations, as well as the study of conflict in Ukraine. There's a real problem with the situation in Gaza in that this is much more complicated, much deeper, much more well-prepared positions that the Hamas troops have developed. So for the Israeli Defense Force to operate in this space, you're operating not just on the surface, you're looking up, you're looking at drones, you're looking at buildings, you're looking at surface, you're looking at subsurface, and then you're looking deep subsurface. And then, of course, you're dealing with the cyber domain and then the information messaging, the images, the narratives that are being put out there about what Israel's doing, what's happened, and how trying to engender a reaction from other parts of the world, along the lines of what we've seen already from protests around the world against Israel in support of Palestine. So this, to my mind, is very much what Hamas has wanted to happen. And of course, Netanyahu's in a bind, echoing the experience of his predecessor as Prime Minister 50 years ago, Golda Meir, who in the 1973 war was faced with a very difficult situation, but pushed back quite successfully, but had to go very, very hard. This is a very different situation now because it's not the Egyptian army that they're fighting directly. This is Hamas fighters who they don't look any different from civilians in and around the streets of Gaza. And we know that Hamas has developed these facilities using resources that have been gifted from other parts of the world, from goodwill from many countries. They've spent the money not on hospitals and schools and education, but on infrastructure underground, infrastructure that can be used to defend against Israeli attacks that they've invoked. So there's a couple of aspects here, Ash, that are really interesting because there's a lot of talk about cutting of water and food and all that, but I suspect, and it's conjecture, but it's pretty educated conjecture, that there's a lot of resources that Hamas has stored underground. There's a lot of space underground, a lot of facilities underground. So the talk of people not having anywhere to go, well, actually, there's a lot of space underground for those who haven't evacuated to the south. But, this is something that is going to be all about the image, all about portraying Israel as the bad guy. And of course, there's been plenty of narrative along that line already that we've seen coming out in the last few days and the last couple of weeks.
And John, as the IDF progresses with that operation in Gaza, it's obviously also keeping a very close eye on its borders to the north as well. What are we seeing in terms of skirmishes on other fronts?
So that's right. And the problem with the skirmishes to the north from inside Lebanon, where Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed forces, are equipped with a lot of missiles, more sophisticated missiles than the Hamas has in Gaza, because they've got a direct land route into Lebanon through Syria. And of course, the support that Syria has been provided as well. This is generating considerable angst for Israel. There is a sense, I think, though, that Iran, that's been backing Hezbollah and backing Hamas indirectly and directly, it appears, has its own concerns while it's been taking on American forces in other parts of the Middle East, in Iraq and elsewhere, and Syria. There is a sense that Iran has to balance up a lot of things here, and it probably is not all that enthused about going all in at the moment because of the stakes are high and it's got a lot to lose. There's not only does it face the prospect of retaliation from the United States and Israel itself, but it's got a domestic political problem as well. We know that politically Iran is more fragile than most people admit and recognise, and we've seen already, more reports of significant unrest inside Iran as well. So there's a lot of things to balance up there, but the grave concern is also that this will escalate. Of course, Russia's busy pursuing its campaign in Ukraine. We've got a concentration of US naval assets and NATO ships in the Mediterranean, and they are, I think, there to send a signal to anyone looking to pile in on Hamas, particularly Iran, but I think also sending a message to Egypt and elsewhere to hold your horses, let Israel deal with this, mindful that this is no longer about deterrence, this is about digging out, rooting out Hamas, and that's going to take a long time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take weeks and probably months. The question then is, does Israel have the political breathing space to get this done before its world crowds in on it from pressure internationally that's going to be applied to the politics in Europe and in the United States and elsewhere? It's incredibly, devilishly difficult.
I think it's a real tinderbox. Professor John Blaxland, always appreciate you making the time for us. Joining us live there in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you, Ash.